Well, very good. This is Bill Boerum speaking with Nikita Smagin, who is based in Tehran for TASS. And we were both on the same panel at the same forum last October in Volgograd, each with different perspectives on things. We didn't really get into foreign policy as such, although maybe you had more to say about that than I did. And I was curious about your observations, which I felt were quite objective about the political situation in Tehran. So I wanted to have your point of view, insights on the current situation. There have been some statements by the US administration and also by the Iranian government about re-engaging in the talks about the nuclear deal. So and I've read your most recent article about this, again, filled with, you're very good to put your TASS articles on the on Facebook so that people can read them there as well, conveniently. It seems as though we're in a standoff or an impasse between the US position and the Iranian position. What would be your analysis of the statements that have been made?
During last week, I think we just get some kind of hope that nuclear deal, that this thing will go out, that we can have a kind of solution of this problem. It doesn't seem right now that it will be an easy thing, and it doesn't seem right now that it will be quickly, because for now, as we see, there are some the statements that both sides are making, they don't match each other. I mean that the American position is that, from the beginning, it was like both sides were talking about that each side is not going to make the steps first. Like America says that we're not going to make lift sanctions while you are violating nuclear deal. Iranian side said that we're not going to, we're not coming back to nuclear deal until you are not going to lift sanctions. And it was like a very difficult thing. But last week we've seen some signals from American side that America is ready for dialogue, America is ready for kind of a compromise, and for now, so we can, as I said, we have a kind of a hope that this dialogue will take place. But still, for now, it's not. We can't be sure about this.
Yeah, no movement, and it was encouraging to some quarters in the U.S. during the campaign, the recent presidential campaign, when Biden said he would return to the Iranian nuclear deal, but he did not give any specifics as to how he would do that, or he didn't get into any conditions. He didn't want to create a dialogue at that time. Of course, now he's been president for exactly 1 month. And you have to start doing something as to your promises. So it becomes a little more specific. But there was that initial encouragement, I think. But it now seems as though each side is maybe caught in a position that it's hard to move out of. They would be criticized by appearing to give ground.
Well, one important thing about Biden's position that I want to say is how it is viewed from Tehran. From Tehran, the current position, current statement that Biden says viewed as that there is not that much change between Trump's position and Biden's position, because the rhetoric has changed. Biden is not that aggressive about Iran. Is not. He doesn't say that Iran is the only threat and so on in the Middle East. But Biden says, and his administration says, that we need not just to come back to nuclear deal, but to extend nuclear deal and include in nuclear deal regional issues, means the regional policy of Iran, and missile program of Iran. And it was actually the same thing that as Trump said. It's just the same. And the only thing that Trump violated nuclear deal from the very beginning. Biden says we want to come back, but we want to extend. Actually, Trump said almost the same. He said that this deal is bad. We need another deal that will include regional issues, and that will include missile program and so on. So and what Iranians say right now, that we don't see any just great difference. The same sanctions.
Well, I think you make a very good observation. I think that out of the box, especially with the Europeans, when the Secretary of State said, and we want to expand, the issues at hand, that would seem to, I don't think Trump was that specific, but it was implied that he was looking for a better deal, maybe more controls. But it would seem that more issues, as you say, have been laid on the table very clearly, and that would almost inhibit a re-engagement, wouldn't you say? It makes it more difficult for the parties, rather than just coming back to the table and then maybe introducing those issues.
The difficulties that we have now is, from one point, American position, that from Iranian perspective, it doesn't make much difference from Trump's. And another thing is Iranian position. It's also now it's rather tough. I mean that in Iran, the political situation has changed during the last several years. During Trump's presidency, the conservative part of political system of politicians in Iran, they get more power. And for example, now the Majlis, the Iranian parliament, is 90% conservatives, and they all say that we don't need, like our talkings with the US, we need to have less dialogue, more pressure. It's more important. So that's why they made a new law. According to a new law, the current government in Iran need to make some steps to make more pressure on US, and according to the idea of Majlis, this pressure will make US lift sanctions. Like, this pressure means that we need to get more uranium, enrich it more. Like, there is the program, how much, like 120 kilos during this year, the uranium should be enriched more than 20%. It's just a clear violation of nuclear deal. Then they said that we don't need to, like, we will give 2 months to the administration and to the Americans. And after that, if they won't lift sanctions, we will stop.
You restrict the observers? The UN
observers. So
that's another issue there. But the first deadline that the parliament passed ended on February 21. Wasn't that the first deadline?
Not exactly. They changed the deadline. It's today, the February 23. Wow. So they changed it like a week ago. It was firstly February 21. Now it's February 23. So exactly today.
Right. And then, of course, the other element that has been introduced has been indicating not to continue to receive the observers from the UN. That's another argument that they're making.
Yeah. So right now the situation is more complicated than it was, for example, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, because the Rouhani, that is the current president, 5 years ago, or even more, when he was he had talks with Obama, he was the president that was newly elected, and he was elected because he was talking about because he said that I'm going to talk with US, I'm going to solve this problem, I will go make the deal, they will lift sanctions and so on. And now Rouhani is a president that everybody that just gets a lot of critics, and he's one of the most unpopular politicians in Iran. And
well, he's coming to the end of his term, coming up.
Yes, without achieving his goals, because the only thing that he was talking about, like only his achievement, real achievement, was nuclear deal. He said that we will get nuclear deal, and then they will lift sanctions, and that's why our economy will feel better. This is actually, it was the only thing that he had. And so
right. I didn't realize that was the main part of his campaign.
And he failed not because of his position. He failed because of unpredictable things that.
So it probably helped him get elected in 2017. When he was reelected to the second term. So now that term is ending, and it's a kind of a strange political framework where we have a new American administration, which, however, as you say, in the eyes of the Iranians, has pretty much the same policies, maximum pressure against Iran. And they're articulating it very clearly. And then we have an unpopular president coming in. So I wonder if just the dynamics of a new administration and one going out that's unpopular is further going to make this up in the air for the next few months. Is that a possibility, that it's just going to be no steps will be taken because of the political positions of the administrations?
Well, as we see now, I think that there is a possibility, because Rouhani really wants to hear, at least for now, he has nothing to lose, but still he is a politician and he wants to have some achievement at the end of his presidency. So he is interested in coming back to the deal, but he is not interested, for example, for extending a deal. He's not interested to to agree or to some other issues that Biden has, and so on. So the only thing that's possible, that the best scenario, that they will come back to a nuclear deal in next month. It's not that difficult, actually, because they can do it step by step. For example, America lifts sanctions, one kind of sanctions, Iran coming back to one part of the deal, another sanction, another part of the deal, and so on. And it's not that difficult. They just need to start dialogue, and to get to this kind of a plan. That's it.
I think you're quite correct. There's some observers in the U.S. that it says it can be I wouldn't say no one wants to use the word concession, but you do something, a small movement on one side, the other side would do some small movement, make some change, something, temporary freeze on something. And in the case of the US, it would be an unfreeze, a lifting of certain kinds of sanctions, maybe humanitarian or food sanctions, something like that, something that would give some encouragement.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, America just made this very fast step. They just around a week ago, they said, it was on Thursday. Yes, it was on Thursday that they said that they not just said that they took back the request in the UN of extending UN sanctions on Iran, that this request was made by the previous administration. They said that Iran is violating nuclear deal, and we need to um, take back the sanctions of the UN sanctions, and so they should be once more in power. So US did it. They said that this request is no more, so that doesn't work anymore. So and this was a signal, and then Biden said that he is ready to talk, and now Iran shall do something. So there was like a first step from
there was a little bit of give. There was a gesture. I think you're right.
It was like a kind of a gesture. But
now, what about the position? You know, just a few days ago, the U.S. and UK, Germany, and France had a joint statement that would seem to be maybe strengthen the U.S. position, wouldn't it? Because they were critical of the U.S. pulling out. But now with a joint statement, it seems like the Europeans are supporting the American point of view. Does that give the U.S. a stronger hand?
Well, yes. Europe in general supports the Biden's approach of coming back to nuclear deal, and Europe also is ready to start dialogue with Iran and to help Iran to start a dialogue with the US. For now, it's more about, I think, the position of Iran. We don't know. We know that there are some contacts between Iran and the American side. Still, they take place. They're not. Maybe there are some, they're not right now. Americans and Iranians haven't met yet. So, but still there are some contacts through, for example, Swiss embassy, from other diplomats, and we don't know what signals Iranians send to Americans. I mean, that we know some signals that they made publicly. Publicly, their position haven't changed. Like, America needs to lift sanctions, and after that, there could be dialogue and some kind of.
Well, I think if there could be a partial lifting of sanctions, certain types of the sanctions, and even if you would say on a temporary basis, there would be some gesture that would be made. But as you indicate, there are these back channels. Does anything go on in Vienna at all, where the secretariat is, you know, for the JCPOA? The secretariat is there, the headquarters, is that a place? Vienna is near, so, or is it strictly, you think, in the, does Switzerland have an embassy there in Tehran?
Well, I think both things, the contacts take place in Vienna, the contacts take place in Iran from the Swiss embassy. Also, Iran said just 2 days ago, they said that some of foreign ministers of other countries give them some information from American sides, give some signals. They said that it was not about nuclear deal. They were talking about exchanging prisoners, but they said that they already mentioned that some kinds of contacts take place. So it's possible that there are also some information about nuclear deal. They also exchange some information about this. And the main thing actually is that both sides need a dialogue. It's just without a dialogue, there will be no.
There needs to be right. Yes. There needs to be contact.
Right now, we're not sure that that dialogue has started. We know that there are some contacts, but we know that publicly there is nothing like a dialogue. Iranians said it very strictly, no dialogue without lifting sanctions, and we can also. Also, we see that it's not the situation is not the same as it was 1 month ago. Americans made some steps. Iranians said that it's a good steps. We can work with it, something like this. We agree with it and so on. But the real dialogue that is needed, we don't know for now have it's already started or not. I mean,
well, in the statement that came out last week with the U.S. and the Europeans, there was also a clear statement that there were going to be consultations, at least from the U.S. and Europeans, with Russia and China. Any indications, statements coming out of Moscow?
yes, Moscow support the coming back to nuclear deal, and but Moscow position is not like European position. Europeans say that we support Biden's approach, and it seems like if now Iranians will not answer to this, to the first steps of Biden's, will not start dialogue, Europeans will view it as as that now it's Iranians who violate the situation, Iranians who doing the bad part. But
right, that does seem to be their position.
Yes, but Moscow is not like this. Moscow is more about Moscow supports more the Iranians' approach. They say that the main goal, the main reason of violation of nuclear deal is American side, that Americans need to lift sanctions, and then we need to start dialogue. And like Moscow support the idea of dialogue, of any dialogue, but still Moscow more support the Iranian approach of, and if the situation will not, if the side will not solve the situation in nearest future, Moscow will blame US for this.
Right, right. Well, I think you have a very good point with the current administration coming to an end, that maybe it can redeem itself in some way if it can have some kind of a success and it doesn't have any more political capital to lose. So, I mean, there's a limit to what they can do, but that would seem to be an opportunity for the Biden administration because they got someone who wants to do something, one would think. Yeah.
The only thing that the current administration in Iran can do is come back to nuclear deal. I mean, it's the only thing that they can. They're very limited because of the new parliament, because of the current situation, because they know that this president is not popular that much, and you know that president is not the first person in Iran. There is Khamenei who also can make some changes in his decisions and so on. So the only thing that Rouhani can do is just I don't know, kind of a maybe small dialogue, but still it seems like he won't change his position. Like that, Americans need to
position will not.
That will come back. Yes, and but next president of Iran, most likely he will be more conservative than Rouhani. Most
That's
likely.
a good point. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Now, Ahmadinejad, is he the most popular amongst the contenders?
No, not at all.
I thought I saw a poll where he was leading. No?
Ahmadinejad was very unpopular president and the end of his presidency. It's the thing that happens all the time. The Iranian president usually at the end of his presidency is not very popular. It depends, but right. Still. The same thing was with Rafsanjani, the same thing was with Khatami, the same thing was with Ahmadinejad, the same thing we see with Rouhani. Usually, president is a kind of person that is public. He, like Khamenei, is not that public as president. President makes some statements, says that we want to achieve this, this, and this, and people see that he can do this. Usually, it's usually like this. President usually doesn't achieve his goals that the goals that he's talking about in the beginning.
Well, there major parts of the government that report directly to the supreme leader. I mean, they don't go to the president. Part like the courts and other parts of the government, the military, they don't report to the president. Is that part of what you're saying? There's limited power.
Yeah, but you know, speaking about the internal situation, the leader, Khamenei, he usually doesn't make policy. He makes like a kind of a framework. He makes a framework. Within this framework, president can work. This is important thing, that yes, we can say that he's the most powerful person in the country, but the current policy is made by the government, not by him usually. He has a lot of things.
And the programs.
Yes,
right.
but he makes a kind of a framework.
Let me ask you a little bit about the political process. And I had given a number of lectures about the US political process to various international office audiences last year. So oftentimes the political process of one country is misunderstood or not known by other people. So, but I do understand that, is it in early June that a determination will be made of who the candidates can be, what their qualifications can be? And I remember from the past, you have to have been lived in Iran or be born in Iran, because there was a potential candidate who was disqualified on those grounds. So the candidates will be identified in early June, shortly before the June 18th election, at the presidential elections, the 18th.
Well, I think usually it's like this, that not in the beginning, in the beginning of a new Iranian year, you know that Iranians have their own calendar, so it will be in April. The candidates will announce that they want to take part. They want to take part in the elections, and then there is a kind of election filter. That, like they approve some of candidates, and some of candidates are not approved.
Is that what is that called? Is that an election commission, or what is it that approves the candidates? The people announce, as you say, around April, beginning of the new year, and then a determination is made as to who is qualified. And who does that? Is that some kind of court or election commission? You know?
It's not exactly election commission. It's Majlis Khabrigan. It's a special body that's a special body of I would say it in English. It's assembly of experts. They say.
Oh yes.
But, yes, assembly of experts, and it's the special body that report to Khamenei, report to the leader, and they do it. And the main thing, as they said, that they should be approved, that the candidates should be approved according to Sharia law, like according to, yes. But actually, there are a lot of reasons not to approve somebody, and usually it's a very controlled process. So usually they make like 5 to 10. It's less than 10 usually. Less than 10 candidates, and among these candidates, people will choose. The interesting thing about Iranian political system, that always there is a kind of there is something to choose, because there is usually different candidates. They all are not, so we can't say that it's a kind of a free election, because it's not like anybody will be anybody who wants to take part will take part. As I said, it's a control process, but still usually it's not like they're all the same, and usually they really they try to argue with each other, and it's a kind of interesting thing, because they usually have different views on internal policy, different views of foreign policy, and this is important, because last election, for example, as we've seen, it's like when Rouhani was trying to win the second time, there was the conservative candidate and he didn't win. Rouhani wasn't that popular at that point. He's still they have already reached the nuclear deal. People already seen that it doesn't work as they were promised, but still Rouhani won because it was more about internal policy, because Rouhani was saying that we're not going restrict internet, for example. He said that we're not going to make more limits inside the country. And another candidate was very conservative. He was saying we need to secure our country. We need to make some limits and something like this. So it's very interesting because usually it's very unpredictable, and usually the candidate that is supported by the leader, he loses almost all the time. He loses. So the leader usually doesn't support somebody directly. He's just saying I like more this, for example, or this, something like this. But usually his candidate, he doesn't win. He doesn't win. And the interesting thing that until the assembly of experts will choose who will take part in these elections. We don't know who.
You don't know, yes. Well, when it happens, is that in very early June that the candidates?
No, it's a little bit earlier. It will be, I think, in May. So there are some differences. They can change some dates.
Right.
But
so they have only a few weeks to campaign, if you will.
Officially, they have, if I'm not mistaken, two weeks to campaign. There is a very short place.
Yeah, that's why I thought it was early June, because of the June 18th.
Yes,
so maybe the end of May. So let me ask you this. The U.S. has this very strange process, which I won't bring up. You're probably aware of it. But turning to Iran, so there's a vote. Is it the person with the most votes, or do you have to have a majority? Is there a runoff? What's if you have 7 people running and the leader only gets 30% of the vote, does he become the president, or is there another vote?
There will be another vote.
Oh, there will be.
Yes. So it's about, yes, if somebody will get less than 50%, there will be a second round.
And how soon does that occur, would you say? Is it a month later, 2 weeks, or any recollection of that?
It's about 2 weeks. Usually they count several days. They're counting the votes.
Oh, they count, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Is the election conducted? Is it only a one-day election? In effect, everybody votes.
One-day election. One-day election, and usually from 1 to 3-4 days they count votes.
Yes.
1-2 days. So it's rather quickly, and then they understand that wherever there is the second round is needed or not, and then usually it's in 2 weeks they decide. Also, it's not mentioned they can change the exact date of this, so they can decide, they can change some rules. I mean, not the rules, but it's not written when exactly the second round should be. But usually it's in 2 weeks.
Right, 2 weeks. Yeah, right. Well, that'll be very interesting to follow that. And are there political polls that go on during this period of time? Do we have that, like in many countries? Yeah.
Yes, there are some political polls. There are some. From one point, there are some institutes. There are some. Of course, there are a lot of closed polls. We're not talking about this because we don't know.
Candidates have their polls.
Yes,
candidates.
But there are some open polls. I mean, there are some institutes that publish the information, and also some media makes polls.
Yes.
Usually, polls that are made by media, by Iranian media, are not correct, because Iran media, I usually support some kind of a candidates. There are some conservative media, there are some reformist media, there are some media that support some exact politicians. So usually the polls by media are not very, you're not verified.
That's a good
So,
observation. Yeah.
not credible. And but there are some institutes, there are 2 or 3 institutes that make polls, and there are, to some point, you can trust them.
Right. Well, now you've actually been there in Tehran only for about what, almost 2 years or a year and a half plus for TASS. Is that right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like 1 year and 7 months.
Right. Well, you've certainly been a very good observer and have learned a lot with the time that you've been there. And you were previously, you worked for a journal, was it a weekly journal, Interlocutor in Moscow? Is that right? Before you joined TASS, you were with TASS?
No, not exactly. Before going to Iran, I worked for TASS for around 1 year, and before this, there were several positions. The last position was that I was the editor-in-chief of Iran Today. It was it was a media about Iran without policy. It was about the society and cultural. It was the media that was covering some not political issues in Iran.
Oh yes, right. Yes. Culture and local events and things like that. Yeah.
Yes, things like this. And before this, I worked for a journal. Its name was Собеседник.
Oh yes, that's what I meant. Yeah. Right. That's right. Yeah. Well, very good. Well, this has been very informative, very, very helpful for me to understand this, and I will get the word out to my network of your insights into this situation. So.
And do you mind if I'll just add one thing? I think
sure.
It's important about the understanding of the policy of the next president of Iran. You know that, as I said, most likely he will be more conservative than the current president. But you know that in Iran, there is no doubt that sanctions should be lifted. And actually, the next president, anyway, he will need to have a kind of a dialogue with the US. So when somebody says that, next president will be conservative and there will be a lot of more doubts about coming back to nuclear deal, I don't agree with that 100%, because in Iran, just in general, everybody understands that they can't live with sanctions. They can't, not just they can live, they can survive with sanctions. But if you want to develop country, you need to lift sanctions. And so who will be the next president, we don't know. But anyway, he will be interested in lifting sanctions. And anyway, even if there won't be some achievement during the Rouhani presidency, we will see that.
Well, that's actually an encouraging perspective, because as someone would be ready to make some kind of a deal to do something to get the sanctions away. Now, when does the new president come into power? Let's say that somebody wins the first election, gets 50%. When do they actually become president?
It will be August, the end of August. So just 2 months after the elections, the previous president's still in power, and it's like the end of August.
Right. Well, I think that structure and time frame is important here to whether or not things can, how soon that they can happen. That's one. As if the current administration can't get anything done, then it'll have to be the new one, and they really can't start till August. So we've got to keep everybody calm for a few months here, I think. So, well, look forward to speaking with you again. I'll be reading your articles. So.